They say money doesn't change people, but that's a lie whispered by folks who've never seen the devil grin. You see, the moment she uttered those 4 words, I knew everything I'd built was forfeit. One way or another, I'm Eleanor Vance, Ellie. To the folks who actually matter, and I've got 75 years' worth of dust on my bones. But the memory of that day is as sharp as a splinter under a fingernail. It was the smell of the damp autumn air in Seattle, mixing with the sharp, clean scent of my downtown loft that always brings it back. I was 42 then, at the peak of my career as an architectural engineer. But that number, 42, suddenly felt like 9 again. It had been decades since Vivian, my mother, had done the polite thing and vanished. Growing up in the Ohio Valley was a slow, beautiful kind of misery. My father, Robert Vance, ran a small, independent bookshop called The Tattered Page. It was a beautiful place, filled with the comforting smell of paper and dust, a place where he truly belonged. But a bookshop, even a perfect one, doesn't pay the electric bill when the rent is due. Vivian left when the shop was already drowning. She didn't slip out in the dead of night, mind you. She walked out in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, after a screaming match with Dad that sounded like glass breaking. She packed a single leopard print suitcase, hugged me with a chilling lack of warmth, and told me, "Your father is a dreamer, Eleanor. Dreamers starve." Then she was gone, chasing some man, a local businessman who, we later learned, promised her a life free of yellowed pages and overdue notices. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stay with me, my dears. Tap that little follow button if you haven't already, and take a moment to leave a note below telling me where you're listening from. It warms this old heart to know how far my words travel. The divorce was mercifully quick. It left Dad and me with the bookshop, which was less of an asset and more of a sinking anchor, and a stack of bills so high I couldn't see over them. Vivian, bless her heart, sent a birthday card every year. Always the same, a watercolor of flowers, and 3 typed words inside. Hope you're well. Cold, impersonal, and more hurtful than silence would have been. Dad. Robert. My Bob. He became both my father and my mother, juggling both roles with the raw, calloused hands of a man trying to keep a sinking ship afloat. He worked 18 hours a day. He'd be up before dawn, stacking shelves, making coffee for the few regulars. Then he'd stay late, doing the bookkeeping, sighing over the ledger that never balanced. I remember the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the way his shoulders would slump when he thought I wasn't looking. When I was 12, I couldn't stand it anymore. I started running errands for the neighbors, then walking dogs, and finally getting a paper route before the sun came up. Every single nickel I earned went into the shop's tin box, or toward milk and bread. Dad would argue, of course, yelling that I should be reading books, not selling them, but I was fierce. I was fighting back against the empty space Vivian left behind. I was fighting for the smell of the paper dust and the comfort of the worn chair where I did my homework. School became my battlefield and my sanctuary. I learned that patterns and systems gave me control, so I poured myself into math and physics. I'd stay late, working out complicated spatial equations, trying to calculate the perfect distance between 2 objects, which was really just my own way of calculating the perfect distance between myself and that old pain. Dad was my true north. He'd sit with me at the kitchen table, which doubled as a workspace for binding torn books, helping me with homework even when he was half asleep. "Ellie," he'd say, his voice a low, comforting rumble, "you are stronger than this place, stronger than your circumstances. Build something real, my girl, something they can't take away." And I did. I studied like a woman possessed. My guidance counselor, another blessing in disguise, saw the fire in my belly and helped me secure a full scholarship to a state university for architectural engineering. That scholarship was my golden ticket, my escape hatch. Moving to Seattle felt like shedding a skin. It was a world of steel, glass, and soaring ambition. I embraced the grind. Tuition was covered, but everything else, rent, food, specialized software, was on me. I waited tables at a diner near campus, sometimes pulling a double shift, the smell of grease and coffee permanently clinging to my clothes. I worked as a CAD technician for a small firm on weekends, my eyes burning from the screen, my mind memorizing building codes. My schedule was brutal. Up at 5 to study, to bed past midnight, always calculating the cost of the next month's existence. But every sleepless night, every aching muscle was a foundation stone for my empire. By the time I was 35, I had my license, my name on several major projects, and a senior partnership at one of Seattle's most respected firms. My income? Well, let's just say it was the kind of money that made my childhood struggles feel like they belonged to another person entirely. My father, Robert, was the only person who shared in my success. Once my income stabilized, I quietly set up an endowment for the tattered page. I hired him an assistant, a bright-eyed literature student, and I insisted he use the money to finally fix the leaking skylight he'd been patching with duct tape for 20 years. When I flew him out to Seattle, he'd look up at the sleek, towering structures I'd helped design, and his eyes would shine with a pride that was worth more than any bonus. "You built something real, Ellie," he'd tell me, tracing the glass of my apartment window. "Just like I told you." Vivian's cards still came, yearly, predictably cold. They were filed away in a drawer, a stack of painful reminders that I was never enough for her to stay. I'd learned to live with the hollowness, covering the scar with success and security. I'd closed the door on the past, or so I thought. One late Tuesday evening, a poetic mirror of the day she walked out decades before, a sharp, insistent rapping on the solid core oak of my apartment door shattered the quiet of my 32nd floor solitude. I was reviewing schematics for a new high-rise when I opened it. Standing in the cool, filtered light of the hallway was Vivian. It had been 23 years. She looked familiar but harder. Her smile, wide and practiced, didn't reach the calculating coldness in her eyes. Slumped beside her was Marcus, the half-brother I'd only ever seen in the occasional grainy photo on a distant relative's social media feed. He was tall, soft-looking, and already radiated a bored entitlement that prickled my skin. "Eleanor, my sweet girl." "Look at you!" Vivian lunged, pulling me into a stifling, perfume-laced hug that I stiffly endured. Marcus, meanwhile, didn't offer a greeting, merely appraised the Italian leather console table in the foyer with a sneer. "Nice digs," he muttered, his eyes already drifting past me into the spacious living area. We moved into the main living space. My apartment, which felt like a secure fortress built from my own ambition, suddenly felt exposed, contaminated by their presence. Vivian's gaze darted around, lingering on the minimalist art, the custom shelving, and the incredible, sprawling view of the city I had helped shape. She started with the usual flimsy pretense, how much she'd missed me, how proud she was. But the words were weightless, cheap plastic toys in the face of 2 decades of neglect. Then the velvet glove came off. "I've heard things, Eleanor." "Wonderful things," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, but her eyes were fixed, sharp. "About your partnership, your bonuses. You're earning a truly staggering amount, aren't you?" She leaned in, a gesture that was supposed to convey intimacy but only radiated greed. "Marcus is looking at a massive opportunity. A real estate investment group in Miami. A pre-launch of luxury condos. It needs a huge initial capital injection, $250,000 minimum. A chance of a lifetime, $250,000. The figure was obscene, the nonchalant way she tossed it out more so. It wasn't a request for help. It was a demand, delivered with the assurance of a creditor presenting an overdue invoice. Marcus finally looked up from his phone, a cheap plastic smirk playing on his lips. "Yeah, it's going to be a quick flip, Ellie. We're talking 10 times return in a year. You throw in the seed money, and we can cut you in on 20%. Small price for family, right?" He then propped his muddy-soled boots on my custom wool rug. Anger, cold and hard, began to crystallize in my chest. This wasn't a reunion. It was a brazen, calculated heist attempt. I kept my voice unnervingly level, the calm tone of someone reviewing a dangerous stress calculation. "Vivian, you haven't spoken to me in 23 years, except for 3-word annual cards. Now you appear on my doorstep demanding $250,000 for your son's venture. How did you find me? And why are you so sure about my financial situation?" Vivian quickly fabricated a flimsy story about tracking down old high school friends, who then saw a City magazine article about my firm. It was weak, unconvincing and full of evasions. "We're family, Eleanor," she repeated, that poisonous word used as both a weapon and a shield. "Family helps family. You have so much excess now. Think of this as atonement for my years away, a way to rebuild our bond. Atonement." The audacity of the word nearly made me laugh. My bond with her was the scar tissue she'd left on my soul. Marcus chimed in again, his entitlement unbearable. "Don't be stingy, Ellie. This place is proof you're sitting on a gold mine. It's not like you actually need that money. You're just a workaholic. We'll actually use it." That comment, the implication that my hard-won success was somehow less valid because I worked for it, snapped a wire in my composure. I told them I would need time to consider such a staggering amount, deliberately injecting a professional formality into my tone that made Vivian's smile crack. The rest of the conversation was short and tense. They eventually left, Vivian promising a call, her hug lingering slightly too long, a desperate proprietary grip. I locked the 3 deadbolts on my door and stood in the absolute silence, my heart hammering a furious rhythm against my ribs. I hadn't felt that raw and exposed since I was a child hiding from creditors. This was more than just a financial shakedown. It was a violation of the secure life I'd painstakingly constructed. And the question of how she knew my true wealth level, not just that I was successful, but the depth of my earnings, gnawed at me. The next afternoon, Vivian and Marcus ambushed me at a high-end coffee bar near my office, a calculated move to pressure me in a public space. Vivian opened with a torrent of lies, portraying herself as the victim of the divorce. "Your father made it impossible for me to stay, Eleanor. He was always so bitter, so judgmental about my aspirations. He shut me out completely." I listened in icy silence, letting her weave her pathetic tapestry of falsehoods. The truth was that Dad had begged her to stay in touch for my sake. He told her, "I don't care about me. Marie, just call your daughter." She had chosen the new life, the new husband, and the new possibilities over her own child. I have struggled ever since. "Eleanor," she said, her voice trembling, a perfectly executed piece of amateur theatrics. "And Marcus's future. This real estate venture. It's his only chance to escape the life I was forced into." Marcus, still glued to his phone, interjected with the casual arrogance of a prince discussing his due inheritance. "Yeah, and the initial investment is just step 1. I'm going to need a decent car to drive down to Miami, a German sedan, not some cheap thing, and a high-end investment laptop. We're talking another $30,000 minimum." I finally broke my silence. "So, on top of the $250,000 for a high-risk venture, you are now demanding $30,000 for personal accessories? And you still haven't explained how you know my exact earning potential." My voice was low, cutting, devoid of any warmth. Marcus threw his phone onto the marble table. "You're loaded, Eleanor. We saw the documents. You're just stingy, like Dad said." "Robert said nothing of the sort," I retorted, defending my father instinctively. Vivian's mask of softness evaporated, revealing the bitterness beneath. "You're so selfish. I gave you life. You owe us this. You're wasting your money on high-rise apartments and art when your own flesh and blood could be building a dynasty," she hissed, leaning across the table. "I worked for every single penny I have," I stated firmly. "Where were you when I was scrubbing toilets at 20 and pulling all-nighters to pay rent? You don't get to claim family only when it's convenient for your bank account." The argument escalated into a full-blown spectacle. Vivian was shouting, blaming me for her absence, Marcus yelling that I was too self-important to help. The cafe crowd hushed, and every eye was on us. I stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I am done, Vivian. You get nothing. Not a penny." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong and desperate. "You will regret this, Eleanor. You have no idea what we know and what we can do." Her warning was cold, terrifyingly clear. I tore my arm away and walked out. The fury was a hot, blinding thing, but underneath it, a terrifying realization was solidifying. They had seen financial documents. Not just estimates. Marcus's slip, we saw the documents, confirmed that they hadn't just stumbled upon an old friend. They had been actively investigating me, which required access I had not granted to anyone but my accountant and my father. I spent a restless few hours securing every digital asset I owned, changing all passwords, enabling biometric locks, and reviewing the security logs on my corporate servers, a luxury I had as a senior partner. I was meticulous, trained in pattern recognition. Nothing seemed amiss on the corporate front, but the unease was a heavy stone in my stomach. Then the doorbell chimed. It was Vivian and Marcus standing there with the same practiced, sickly sweet demeanor. "We just wanted to apologize, Eleanor," Vivian said, her voice sickly sweet. "We were emotional. Can we just talk calmly?" Against every shred of my better judgment, I let them in, hoping to end the confrontation on my territory. I stood by the kitchen island, arms crossed. While they settled on the couch, Marcus immediately pulling out his laptop, claiming he had an urgent email to send. Vivian started probing again, her questions chillingly specific. "How does your firm handle quarterly profit sharing? Do they issue stock options under a separate entity?" I kept my responses deliberately vague, my eyes scanning the room. My corporate laptop was in my briefcase, but my personal machine, a high-powered rig I used for side projects, was on the desk. I excused myself to get a glass of water, and that's when it happened. In the minute I was gone, I returned to find Marcus hunched over my personal computer, the screen glowing with the interior of a secured network file I recognized instantly. It was the directory structure for my father, Robert's, legacy account, the one I used to manage the bookshop's endowment and his modest retirement savings. "What in the hell are you doing?" I snarled, dropping the glass. It hit the marble counter with a clatter. Marcus froze, but Vivian jumped into defense mode instantly. "We were just curious, Eleanor. You left it open. You have so much. Why are you hiding your father's finances too?" My blood ran cold. The screen showed a series of complex data files, compressed archives, and a log detailing a remote login that originated from an IP address I recognized as belonging to a public library near Vivian's last known town. I yanked the laptop away, my hands shaking not from fear, but from white-hot rage. "You didn't just guess my salary. You didn't just hear things through old friends," I accused, my voice barely a whisper, yet vibrating with fury. "You hacked my father's accountant's data. You used the one person I trust completely to steal the keys to my information." Vivian's face went white. She didn't deny it. Instead, she launched her final, cruel offensive. "Your father is a failure, Eleanor. He never amounted to anything but a failure in a dusty shop. He dragged you down with him, and I had to know how you managed to climb out of his pathetic life." Marcus snickered. "Yeah, he's a loser. You only owe him a handout, not your loyalty." The cruelty, the calculated attempt to destroy the one pure relationship in my life, ignited something terrible and necessary in me. I reached for the landline, my fingers dialing 911. "Get out of my apartment right now," I commanded, holding the phone aloft, my gaze fixed on Vivian's rapidly fracturing composure. "You accessed stolen private financial data. That is a felony in this state. You will leave, or I will hand the police everything. The login logs, the IP address, and your admission that you were curious about my father's finances." Vivian stared at the phone, her breath hitching. The mask was completely gone, replaced by naked fear and venom. She grabbed Marcus, who was stammering excuses, and shoved him toward the door. "You've made a huge mistake, Eleanor," she warned, her voice thick and cold. "You haven't heard the last of us." I didn't reply. I just watched the door slam, the sound echoing in the silence. I sat back down at my desk, my heart pounding in my ears. I knew with the chilling certainty of a data analyst that this was far from over. The first person I called was my father, Robert. He answered, his voice weary but warm, asking about my day. My voice broke as I told him everything, the financial demands, the break-in, the hacking of the endowment records. "She's been lying about you, Dad," I choked out. "She's been twisting the truth to everyone, saying you cut her off, saying you're a failure." He sighed, a long, weary sound I'd heard countless times over the bookshop's ledger. "That's Vivian, my love. She always finds a way to make the truth fit her narrative. Don't you fret about me, Ellie. You just protect yourself." He confirmed what I already knew. His accountant had reported strange activity weeks ago, a password change attempt that had been blocked. The violation of his trust cut deep, but his calm acceptance of her nature hardened my resolve. I wasn't just protecting my money anymore. I was protecting the quiet dignity of the man who raised me. The very next day, I met with my firm's corporate lawyer, Mr. Wallace, a man as sharp and unforgiving as a newly sharpened graphite pencil. I laid out the evidence, screenshots of the unauthorized access logs, the IP address, the video footage, from my lobby showing their uninvited return, and the detailed notes from our tense reunion where the financial demands were made. "This is not a family dispute, Eleanor," Mr. Wallace stated, reviewing the file. "This is harassment, attempted extortion, and data theft. We will proceed immediately with a legal injunction and a permanent restraining order. We will cite their unauthorized access to your professional financial data as proof of intent." The process was grueling, a parade of paperwork, affidavits, and court appearances that ripped the scabs off old wounds. But Mr. Wallace was a bulldog. Within a month, the Orlando court granted a permanent restraining order against Vivian Hayes and Marcus Hayes. They were legally barred from contacting me, my father, or approaching my residence or workplace. The judge's ruling felt like the installation of a titanium alloy shield, a formidable layer of defense. Even with the order in place, Vivian tried one last, desperate grab. A week after the ruling, I received an automated alert from my high-security investment portfolio. Someone had attempted to initiate a wire transfer of $50,000 using a deeply obscure, decades-old security question I had only ever shared with my father. My multi-factor authentication system flagged it instantly and locked the account. It was her final, contemptible attempt. I reported it to Mr. Wallace, who ensured that the attempt was logged by the court, guaranteeing that the next time they crossed the line, the consequences would be severe. It took a year for the air to feel truly clean again. A year for the metallic taste of betrayal to fade from my mouth. Word of Vivian's greed and tactics spread through the fractured network of our old family relations. Aunt Clarissa, Robert's older sister, reached out to me, her voice heavy with apology and resignation. "Marie, Vivian, she's been like this since we were children, Ellie," Clarissa confessed, sharing stories of manipulative schemes, lies, and borrowed money she never returned. "It's never been about you, my dear. It's always been about the hole she carries inside her." Clarissa's words were the final, crucial piece of my healing. They helped me realize that the abandonment, the cruelty, and the recent theft attempt were not a reflection of my worth. They were a consistent, predictable pattern of Vivian's deep-seated failure to be a decent human being. I started seeing Dr. Lena, a therapist recommended by a colleague, a kind woman who specialized in childhood trauma. Dr. Lena helped me dismantle the belief that I was responsible for my mother's choices. "You spent decades proving you were worthy of love, Eleanor," she said, her voice calm and firm. "Now, you must simply accept that her absence was her burden, not yours." Through months of challenging, necessary work, I learned to let go of the girl who thought she wasn't enough. I realized my success hadn't been a shield against her judgment, but a monument to my own resilience. Inspired by my journey, I founded a small charitable fund in Seattle, funneling a significant portion of my firm's profit sharing into it. The Vance Foundation for Urban Design offered scholarships and mentorship to young people from struggling families who showed a knack for engineering and architecture. Launching it felt like a final act of atonement, not for Vivian, but for the little girl who had worked a paper route and studied by flashlight. My friend Samuel, a fellow architect, helped me set it up, his quiet enthusiasm steadying my resolve. My neighbor Leah, a social worker, helped me connect with deserving candidates. They, along with my father, Robert, who finally sold the bookshop and moved closer to me, became my chosen family. They were the people who showed up, celebrated my wins, listened when I faltered, and reminded me what unconditional love looked like. One evening, watching the sunset over Puget Sound with Dad and Leah, I realized the most important structure I had ever built wasn't a skyscraper. It was this life, this circle of respect and love, forged not by blood, but by choice. Family isn't a requirement of genetics. It's a community of trust. I'm 75 now, and I stand by that truth more than ever. The old woman is far wiser than the young architect ever was. And the beautiful thing about money? It's a tool. It's the shovel you use to dig yourself out, and the cement you use to build a better foundation for others. It doesn't change you, but it certainly reveals who everyone else really is.